Hello, everyone. It's time, and let's get started with the webinar. My name is Kelvin, and I'm the Partnership Manager at Calqulate. And with me today, I have Niko. Niko is the CEO and co-founder of Calqulate. He has been a SaaS CFO for, 20 years plus. He's been an advisory in over 10 plus countries, and he has 5 years plus experience in accounting, service, and industry. So he understands what it means to manage finances, especially for a SaaS company. So he will be taking care of the financial analytics part of today's conversation. And on the other hand, we have Taija, who is the head of growth at Zapflow. She focuses on improving the processes and generating growth by creating awareness and turning it into a long-lasting relationship with mindset towards data-driven growth hacking methodology. I believe I call her an expert in growth hacking and in this sales and marketing. So she will be taking us through, the ingredients around sales, marketing, analytics, how to measure them, how she measures her experience, and I believe you can learn a thing or two from there. And Niko will come in at the second part of this webinar to solidify what she's going to be saying about sales and marketing and relate it to finance. So we can all see how these three departments work together to ensure growth for the company. And with that being said, I would like to welcome Taija on stage.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. So super excited to tell you a little more about important aspects that I have faced around this topic as well. So a really important topic and hot topic, especially being this year. So I'm also looking forward to even learning something from you guys. So I have only been working at Growth about a year. So still definitely these things are learning curve for me. But I hope you might get some interesting ideas from what I'm planning on discussing today. And of course, don't hesitate to reach me out after this webinar if you want to discuss the topic further. But before going into more specific areas of this topic, I just want to take a little step back and talk about data, and especially data that you have in your CRM. So is your data reliable, accurate, and validated? So I once read this sentence: CRM is nothing without reliable data. So as you all must know, the first goal of CRM system is to centralize the data concerning clients and leads that will then enable the sales teams to kind of develop and manage these relationships. But in order to do so, they need to be able to trust the data that is in your CRM system. So as obvious this may seem, the reality is in fact quite different very often. So obviously bad data equals to bad analysis and again to bad processes. So there's no a good big picture of what has been done and what is to come. So it might destroy the user confidence, and it is very difficult to be also transparent and, for example, even onboard new people to your company. So when CRM lacks reliability, over time the data entered into your CRM actually kind of becomes just unusable. So I also read once that the consequences on this business development for the company are quite serious, in terms of it is even estimated that the lack of reliability can impact a company's turnover by up to 20%, if I remember correctly. So the quality of the data in your CRM system is a major factor for your sales performance. So when sales team member or any other member of the team need to spend time on finding the needed insights to make activities or decisions, this time they are just not selling nor building relationships. So I have just listed out a couple of challenges here, for example, quantity, quality, lack of know-how, and data models, and input and collection. So for example, how to integrate tools properly that data is collected the right way into the single source of truth platform. So also kind of lack of know-how. There are so many metrics at SaaS that it can be very overwhelming. Trust me, I have been there as well. So that's why today I want to just show you the importance of why to invest in data analytics and its usage for driving growth. So more importantly, how this could be tackled. So define which is going to be your single source of truth. So where all the necessary insights are gathered. And also create even, for example, some sort of data glossary, if that helps your teams to kind of map out maybe like all the property fields, for example, in your CRM system that must be filled out and kept updated at all times. And also, for example, do audits, even small structured ones, weekly with your team, and for example, more commonly larger audits, for example, quarterly. And also create automated CRM cleanups if possible, and work around kind of, for example, duplicate management and other data management. And also make sure everyone enters accurate and correct data in your CRM. And also maybe why not even kind of hire data analysts to support your teams in making sure that the data is reliable, accurate, and validated, and also real time and presented well as insight that support this kind of data-driven decision making. So analytics should be definitely one of the core elements at the heart of your business. We can move on to the next slide then. So then I kind of want to just dive a bit into some important metrics. So firstly, CPL, so cost per lead. Why does measuring CPL matter? So CPL is definitely only one of the metrics that, for example, digital marketers often look at, but obviously don't confuse it with CPM or other CPC and so on, other metrics. But CPL is a very important part of your, for example, lead generation processes, and it provides data on how cost effective your campaigns are and when it comes to generating new leads for your sales team. So the goal is indeed here the cost efficiency, and therefore you should aim for minimizing this metric. So then how can you calculate this CPL? So total cost of campaign divided by number of leads generated from this campaign. So you should use this metric as part of setting, for example, sales goals or determining budget, as well as you would need this metric also in order to calculate the potential return on investment. But also it might be clever to check out some industry benchmarks for this metric to kind of find out how your CPL actually compares to industry average. So it gives you a bit of maybe guidance to kind of for what kind of activities you should prioritize. And there are also kind of CPL calculators as well as other calculators, but I will talk about, for example, return on ad spend a little later. But how to reduce CPL? So I want to give you some good practices if you would get some ideas to try out how to minimize this metric that you could maybe take into a deeper look and apply to your business behalf. So first of all, personalize your campaigns. So for example, good example, ads and landing pages just need to be aligned. So with an ad, you build a certain expectations, obviously, and it should be kind of met by the message and experience of your landing page. And also then A/B test ads or, for example, outreach cadences, pretty much experiment anything you can. So test all variables that affect, for example, on your ad performance, but I would definitely recommend only one variable at a time so that you can still kind of, you're able to track it, that what actually works with higher, for example, CTR or conversion rates and what didn't. Then rethink keywords, for example, do some cleaning, find new keyword opportunities, or take out keywords that are not performing as hoped. And also maybe try out long tail keywords. So is your audience kind of perhaps more willing to convert from those keywords? Also retarget site visitors based on behavior. So yes, you can retarget visitors based on site visitors, but also why not based on specific action a visitor has made? For example, downloaded a white paper or fact sheet or anything similar. And then analyze the behavior, create retargeting flows and experiment them. And then check performance by time, device or location. So when and by what device and where your leads are coming from. And basically, these are just kind of few ideas that you could start from, but analyze trends across your whole audience and just try to adjust campaigns to those patterns. So CPL is super important and simple metric to use for these things to make your campaigns more effective to generate leads. We can move to the next slide again. So then I would like to move on to the other metric that helps you drive your business growth. So you, of course, want to track your advertising performance, but why is it important to track and how should you do it? So how to track performance is, for example, to calculate return on ad spend. So you simply divide campaign revenue by cost of campaign. So although it is not as easy as it sounds, always, because if you cannot, for example, identify exactly how much revenue you generate from your certain ad. But by kind of simple example, if you spend 500 euros on your campaign and generate 2.5K from it, your return on ad spend is 5-to-1 ratio, basically. So you would earn 5 euros for every 1 euro that you spend on your campaign. Most companies aim for 4-to-1 ratio. The average is pretty much 2-to-1 ratio, although of course it depends on many aspects, and of course on your industry that your business operates in. But why is this metric then so important? So for example, media reach, frequency, clicks, followers, conversions, social shares, engagement, and so on, they are no longer kind of just enough as themselves. So you need something else to support it. So you can track ad performance by return on ad spend. And by this metric, you can know exactly how much revenue your paid campaigns are driving sales for your business. So which is probably the metric you're genuinely interested about, especially the company leaders are. So by this metric, you can generate then insights and reports on your campaign success, which helps you then also refine kind of your spend continuously and eventually reach the most revenue for the least cost. So also then return on ad spend and return on investment, they seem very similar, but they are still a bit different. So most campaigns are cost and not necessarily just investments. So return on investment measures overall, obviously investment, including other expenses as well, and return on ad spend focuses on your ad spend and campaign for profitability. We can move to the next slide. Then one of my favorite areas of this topic, so marketing and sales analytics alignment. So conversion rates are the language by which marketing and sales communicate. So I think this sentence describes quite well the initial idea of the alignment. So there are 3 simple points that I want to highlight. That's why this marketing and sales analytics alignment is could be super vital for your business. So communication, transparency, and collaboration. So it takes time to align your sales and marketing teams and analytics, but it's definitely worth it. So these 3 points kind of enable the critical business growth and better efficiency as well. So this alignment sometimes can be called as marketing as well, aims for higher quality leads and more revenue. But why basically should you align your sales and marketing, at least in analytics level? So for example, to increase revenue through marketing and so return on investment, shorten sales cycle, simplify your workflows, or perhaps at the moment you might receive maybe 2 low quality leads, for example. So how to achieve this alignment? So you could try perhaps few things. So set shared goals for your sales team and marketing team. So of course, teams should have different KPIs, but sales and marketing teams should work very closely together. Then report on revenue, share lead generation findings, and kind of other findings from the, for example, awareness and acquisition stages. And also then use sales insights from closed sales, do, for example, win and loss analysis. We have found it very, very useful. And attend sales meetings. And for example, Zapflow, in our Monday sales meeting, our, for example, growth team and customer success teams are joining the sales meeting weekly. And coordinate your campaigns with sales. So for example, for the specific target audience, why not to do, for example, a warm-up ad campaign on LinkedIn for 1+1 week, and after that sales team start outreach multi-channel cadence for the same target audience. So kind of therefore we go back to these 3 points. So communication, transparency, and collaboration. We can move to the next slide. So those 2 metrics were, I think, on top of my list to highlight for this purpose when talking about marketing and sales analytics for growth. But there are also forecasting, which is vital in terms of growth. So forecasting growth is also affected by the historical data and trends. So it's also important for this purpose to kind of keep the data reliable, accurate, and validated so you can actually use it. So, but just as a simple example, I have added here the kind of demonstration of how to calculate next quarter's revenue and growth rate forecasts. But then if thinking about more on sales forecasting, I think, for example, there are some good methods out there for creating sales forecasts. So for example, opportunity stage forecasting, that is kind of going into likelihood to close percentage based on your pipeline, length of sales cycle forecasting, intuitive forecasting, and also historical and multivariable analysis, and then obviously pipeline forecasting. We can move to the next slide. But then I'd like to show you an interesting example I saw in one workshop on how to calculate volume and media spend in order to achieve sales target. So how many online leads does the company need to hit the sales target? So you could take, for example, certain amount of sales per month divided by close rate, and you would get the number of leads needed. So you could use this number again to divide it by website conversion rate and getting the website visitors needed. So this could be kind of how many qualified website visitors you would need in order to hit the goals. And again, same goes to how many clicks or impressions does the company need. So kind of number of website visitors needed, and you could divide that by at CTR and getting the impressions, for example, and so on. But then kind of once knowing a little bit of these numbers, kind of and on how to achieve sales targets, then we can think about a little more on the time, people, and activities. So kind of what needs to be done in order to achieve these volumes, for instance. So does it require certain ad copy, frequent A/B testing, and so on. So kind of taking it up just a little bit deeper into on how to actually set, for example, your marketing budget for next year. And now it's obviously a good time to do that. So obviously first consider next year's revenue and new customer acquisition goals, and also how many customers you want to acquire, and then how much we should spend to acquire that number of new customers. So in order to know that, you need to obviously know, for example, CPL. So also you can use CPL, for example, to allocate budget across different channels. And if you don't know your CPL, as mentioned earlier, you could, for example, benchmark it to industry standards. And next number to determine is the rate at which basically these leads actually convert and become paying customers. So meaning, of course, the conversion rates. And obviously a marketing automation tool is super helpful for these purposes. So, but again, keep the data reliable and accurate in order to gather the needed information that you need. So kind of calculating your annual market budget, how many leads do you need kind of in order to achieve what you need, how much will that cost, also take into account any other marketing expenses and so on. So basically the goal, increase conversion rates, decrease CPL, and hopefully kind of this kind of simple way gives you a bit of idea how to maybe get started for the next year with budgeting. Thanks. So then I would also like to highlight just really briefly a few essential skills for a data analyst, or for example, what to require basically from digital marketer or sales manager or any other. So if you kind of got a spark for investing more to analytics and data, so analyst or just who works closely with analytics should be able to conduct quality reports, make optimization recommendations, understand consumer trends, work with analytic tools, and to kind of generate insights, collaborate with stakeholders, and of course, use the data for smarter decisions to drive growth. And kind of just as a bit of conclusion, I want to come back to the few kind of takeaways, how to use marketing and sales analytics to drive business growth. So setting targets, making smarter decisions and better decisions, finding ICPs and improving the quality of prospect lists, creating mass personalization, monitoring campaigns and making them more effective, forecasting future demand and performance, uncovering new opportunities, understanding behavior and patterns, and of course, increasing revenue at lower cost. So, and as an additional, of course, I would like to just add that invest in data and its reliability and accuracy. So kind of as said, basically in the beginning, so CRM is nothing without reliable data.
Thank you so much, Taija. That was really informative. I would like us to move on to the next part of the session, where we invite on stage Niko to come and tell us how does all of these Taija just said, how do they make sense financially? You know, how do they relate to the finance department? All right, Niko, the stage is yours now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelvin, and thank you, Taija, for the insightful presentation on the marketing and sales analytics. And now my job as a SaaS CFO is to basically, bridge the gap between the sales department, the marketing department, and the finance department, and then utilize all that data to basically, create financial forecasting, check which channels were actually profitable from a churn point of view, and LTV point of view, and cash flow point of view, and then basically make sure that the financial forecasts are realistic based on the forecast that the sales department and the marketing department have made, so that they all work together as a chain, because that's what it is basically. It's we should all work with the same sets of data, marketing team, sales team, and finance team, and then work together, to quantify that, to track the performance, and make sure that everything is realistic, and we're basically concentrating our efforts on the most important and most profitable channels and acquisition trends and methods. So basically, let's go through, see how inbound and outbound relate to finance here. So let's go to the next slide. The job of financial analytics is really to help sales and marketing to burn money in a sustainable and smart way. It's basically, it's all about, making sure that the $1 that you spend now actually has an impact on your revenue forecasting and cash flow forecasting, etc. And then kind of figure out how could that $1 be spent better and more efficiently, so that you get even better results and lower churn and higher LTV and better cash flows and so on. And then in order to do that, you need to kind of move in between the cycle of having, see the customer seeing the first touch point of your marketing campaign, all the way to being a lead in your deal in your sales pipeline, and closing the deal, the customer paying you money, and then having the revenue recognized throughout the customer lifecycle. So it's basically a big trend or big cycle, and the time when you actually close the deal is kind of somewhere in the middle here. So there's a lot of sales and marketing activities before that, and then there's a lot of cash flows and revenues after that. So usually it's sales and marketing that are active before the deal is closed, and then the finance team is active after that. But they should all work together, because it's really the same customer, and then you need to choose the channels and perfectly, and figure out what's the payment cycle and how much you price for your product. Is your pricing and lifetime value in line with your customer acquisition costs, etc. So financial analytics basically tracks all of these and make sure that we're spending our money in a sustainable way, but still building a growth engine here. We can go to the next slide here. And as everybody know, in order to scale, you need to burn money. Like, there's usually no way around that. Very few companies manage to scale without, in a sustainable way and in a kind of trending way to acquire customers. And to acquire customers means that you're burning money, because you're hiring salespeople, you're making marketing campaigns, etc. So in order to do that, you need to burn money. So let's go to the next slide over here. This is the usual dilemma in companies here. So you can imagine that Cameron, our head of growth, is on the left. He's, I want to burn money. I want to, I want to get results done. I have, targets and so on. And on the right hand side is the CFO. In our case, it's me. And then there's this, obvious, usual, dilemma between the two parties. CFO's job is to say, no, we're not spending money. Or the CFO is saying, why? What are you getting with that? And marketing people are saying, we need to burn money, we need to get results, we need to get deals, and so on. So basically, you need to coordinate, you need to communicate, and then you need to track everything with data that you're burning that money in a good way. Here, so it's all about making the head of growth and CFO work together so that money being burned profitably and with the proper channels and with the proper campaigns and with the proper methods, you're building that growth engine, that you are making sure that you have cash in the bank, you're billing your customers properly with the right kind of billing cycles, and you're basically aligning your customer acquisition costs with the future revenues, lifetime value, and cash flows as well. So it's all about building that growth engine over here, and that's what it's usually the finance team that usually should define that with all that data is to be actually have a growth engine. Marketing and salespeople are always saying that yes, we have a growth engine, but they don't necessarily know what was the churn of that channel, or what was the lifetime value and cash flows like. Is that customer that they acquired, is it actually profitable or not? It's usually the finance team that needs to define whether we actually have a growth engine or not. But we need to remove those silos between marketing team, sales team, and finance team to figure that out. Let's go to the next slide here. Financial analytics usually helps companies to decide how they are spending that money, whether they should hire new staff, which kind of staff. Should they hire lead research specialist or head of sales or a content creator or a growth hacker? Should they concentrate on inbound or outbound? Which is working better? Where are you getting best customers? Which customers are creating the best lifetime value, for example? Should you spend your money on advertising? If yes, which advertising channels, which work the best? Which created the biggest MRR increase, which basically targeted the best ICP that pays the best and has the best LTV, etc. So when you're looking back in time, financial analytics can tell you this, as long as you've collected that data properly and you've analyzed it over here. Let's go to the next slide. So here we're going to look at 6 different sales and marketing KPIs, the most common KPIs that these teams are using, and we're going to look at them from a financial point of view. Like, how can you actually use all that data in financial forecasting, and how should those KPIs actually work together here? So we'll be looking at new leads, we'll be looking at sales cycle length, conversion rates, average revenue per account, sales pipeline value, and the number of new customers. And these are, that every company, whether they have a sales team or a marketing team, they should track. And every SaaS CFO or the SaaS expert or whatever finance expert in a SaaS company should be looking at basically almost on a daily basis or weekly basis here. So let's look at these more in detail, and let's start with new leads here. So we've collected a couple of ideas, how the finance team should utilize new leads and what they could actually, understand with that data. And it's really kind of the foundation of sales forecasting. And when you're doing sales forecasting, you're doing MRR forecasting and therefore cash flow forecasting as well. And if you are an outbound sales driven company, you probably need to have a lead research specialist who's qualifying leads. And that person in your head count is responsible for generating those new leads here. So for example, a lead research specialist could qualify 100 leads per week. You hire one lead research specialist, you're generating 400 leads per month, and you hire the second one, you have 800, then hire a third one, 1,200, and so on. It basically scales with your headcount there. And if you're an inbound sales driven company, it's basically most likely linked to your marketing expenditure. How much money did you actually burn on LinkedIn and Google and Facebook and so on? It's linked to your total CAC. And this is really important to understand that you need to have a crystal clear ICP, ideal customer profile, so that you're targeting the right kind of people when you're generating leads. Because the more leads you burn, the higher your CAC is, the higher your cost per lead is, for example. And at Calqulate, we always like to talk about chopsticks KPIs, because you should never look at one KPI on its own. You need chopsticks. You need to look at it as a pair. So here we've, the obvious chopsticks are LTV to CAC ratio over here, and then new leads can be used for MRR and cash flow forecasting. So this is the number one basically here, and that basically continues in the chain. So let's hop on to the next marketing and sales KPI over here, which is conversion rates. So imagine that that lead has entered your pipeline. Now, whether you have a sales pipeline or a marketing pipeline, it basically, that person or company then travels through your pipeline in various stages here, and conversion rates are basically used as a measure of efficiency between different stages of your funnel. Your funnel is like basically this: you have lots of leads on the top, and then as time goes by, they engage with your company. Some drop out, so the funnel gets smaller and thinner in the bottom, and you can calculate the different conversion rates in between those steps over here. And if you are basically an outbound driven company, you basically you get fast results. You can usually get a lot of activity on the top of your funnel, because you're generating leads with your sales team, and then you're basically interacting with your leads in email campaigns or demos, etc. And then when you get those conversion rates right, when you're following them on a line chart in a trend line, you can basically improve them. Like what did go wrong in this part of the funnel? Let's try to improve that, and then increase the conversion rate from 20% to 25%, for example. So you should always look at these on a line chart and try to tweak them better, basically. For an inbound sales company, usually this part is the tricky part in the beginning, because it takes quite a lot of time and quite a lot of money burn to generate that top of the funnel with inbound, because you need to have content, you need to have, for example, videos, you need to have a blog, you need to be active on social media. So you usually get to a faster funnel in the beginning with an outbound funnel, but then you can try to change it over to an inbound funnel there. And then basically, when you have better conversion rates, you can then target to have, for example, the sales cycle length shorter. You can decrease your CAC, you can decrease your burn rate by improving your conversion rates. And here, the chopsticks, the KPI chopsticks, here usually new leads and length of sales cycle should be looked at together. And then what conversion rate usually leads to is predictable MRR forecasting. When you have a predictable funnel, in different parts of the funnel, you get to predictable MRR forecasting, and therefore you get to predictable growth and cash flow forecasting as well. You can make smart hiring decisions, and you can make smart campaign decisions when you get your conversion rates predictable. Let's go to the third one over here. And this is usually the more abstract part here, which is the sales cycle length. Okay, like imagine you're generating leads, you have conversion rates, tracked in your funnel, but you don't really know how long it takes, for that lead or deal to move from one part of the funnel to the next one over here. And then here, sales cycle length really comes to play. So in order to get to predictable revenue forecasting, you need to get to predictable sales cycle length as well. So you need to kind of, get to, let's say, a lot of SaaS companies, for example, target a 3-week sales cycle length. So they might have a little bit of time in the beginning with the customer, and then they have a 14-day free trial, and then that's your 3 weeks, for example. And some companies, make it faster, some companies make it slower, for example, but it's all about getting the sales cycle length predictable. So you can basically start from the top of the funnel, how many people drop out, and how to get to the bottom of the funnel which time, and then you can basically take that as a starting point for your sales forecasting, revenue forecasting, and cash flow forecasting as well. It's all about timing. If you're having a marketing campaign in October, your sales cycle is 1 month, you're basically closing the first deals in the end of November. It's that easy. So you just have to get it predictable, basically. Finance teams are using this to figure out when does that cash burn that the sales and marketing team are asking for and using, when does it actually turn to revenue and cash flow forecasting? They need to see that what cash is going out, cash is going in, do we have money in the bank still? And if you can do it with lots of cohort analysis and segment analysis, like which products, which markets, etc., drive the fastest growth, the better, because then you can focus also in certain areas of sales much better. Let's hop on to the next one, and I'll try to speed up a little bit so we don't lose the track of time. So new customers here is really the lifeline of the SaaS company. So all like MRR forecasting and sales forecasting is based on closing deals, getting new customers here, and you're using new customers to calculate the units of CAC per new customer, basically MRR growth, cash flows, etc. And it's an extremely important factor in your valuations. For example, how fast growth can you generate by closing these and these much of deals here. And let's hop on to the 5th one here. Sales pipeline value. If you're using a tool like HubSpot or Pipedrive, you're probably using a pipeline, sales pipeline value, and you have different stages of your sales pipeline. You have the stage when a new deal enters the funnel, which has the lowest probability then of closing. And then when the customer or new deal moves along with the funnel, for example, from an email campaign to a demo, to a meeting with the CEO, etc., then the probability of closing that deals increases. And if you have like total of €500,000 in your sales pipeline in different stages with different probabilities, you can use that probability to calculate your forecasted revenue for the whole funnel. It might be then from a $500,000 sales pipeline, you might have realistic revenues of 50,000, for example. So you need to calculate that stage by stage. And this basically leads to your new customers, it leads to your CAC calculation, leads to your headcount calculations, and obviously sales forecasting and MRR forecasting as well. And for inbound sales companies, this basically scales with your ad spend over here. And for outbound sales companies, this scales with your headcount, how many SDRs you have, how many account executives you have, etc. It's linear based on the headcount. You can get that hockey stick effect if you get your inbound right. Let's hop on to the 6th one here. Average revenue per account is used in every single sales forecasting for SaaS companies. So when you close a deal, you basically what's the average revenue forecast for a customer, and then you have the annual contract value calculated based on that. Then you do your cash flow forecasting based on that, like how many months do you bill in advance? Is it the month? Is it the quarter? Is it the year? And then you use that for basically calculating your cash flow forecasts as well. Let's hop on to the next slide here. And it all kind of boils down to this: your lifetime value for your customers need to be, the ratio for LTV to CAC needs to be 3 to 1 minimum. Then you're fine. You can scale your activities here, but you need to be able to calculate your lifetime value correctly and your customer acquisition cost correctly. And it basically, you can utilize the data of the SaaS, of the KPIs that we went through previously here. And we still have one slide, I think, here left, and then we can hop onto the Q&A. This is really the golden rule here. So from the finance team point of view, like marketing and sales teams choose to justify their headcount and expenses. They should know, what is the MRR forecast for next month. They should basically say that if I now hire a new person, if I spend this much of money, it will generate, based on historical data, this much of new revenue, this channel, and the churn will be most likely this, cash flows will be this, and the finance team, gets ready data. That's the level of detail that I would like to see as a SaaS CFO for marketing and sales teams to justify their cash burn here, because otherwise they are not ready to scale. If the LTV to CAC ratio is less than 3:1, you have to do something else than scale. You have to have your KPIs right first, and then you can burn money here. And that's why marketing, sales, and finance teams should talk to one another regularly and remove those silos here. Like here, yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And with that being said, thank you so much, Niko and Taija, for your time and for the knowledge that you sprinkled around in this webinar. On behalf of Calqulate and myself, I would like to thank the audience for joining us today. Hopefully you learned a thing or two that's going to help you run your business in a more smart and scalable way. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact either Niko or Taija or myself or Calqulate team. I don't know, LinkedIn, email, whichever channel you feel you seem fit, and we'll get back to you. But with that being said, I would like to close this webinar by saying thank you everyone for being here, and see you guys in the next webinar.